So I'm still up a piece, but I probably should not have allowed this. There probably was a cleaner way to play this. Actually, there's rook c5. Wait, I blundered. My opponent has rook c5. I didn't see that. I am completely lost here. I did actually miss this rook c5 idea altogether. Welcome back, everyone. For today's video, we are back for another edition of our educational speedrun series. So without further ado, let's jump right into the action with a classic 10-minute rapid game.
Zooming through the game with a bomb cloud start, trashing all your prep like it's modern art. Knight on the rim, he'll still find the win. Chat's going wild, bro thinks he's Hikaru again. Oh hey hey, he's smurfing play by play, beats you blindfolded, still sipping latte. Queens off flying, eagles meet defeat, just another speed run on Hikaru Street.
All right, first game. So we got the move d4. Now this time I'm going to play d5 and e6 here. Whoa, we get e4. Okay, I'm going to take the pawn here. This one is known as the Blackmar-Diemer Gambith. We get knight to c3. Okay, I'm going to play knight to f6 to guard the pawn. And now my opponent plays f3. Now, against this setup, I do believe that pawn takes pawn is okay. I believe that bishop to f5 is also fine. I'm trying to remember exactly which line I want to go for. I think the line I'm going to play is this move bishop to f5, simply guarding this pawn on e4 with the bishop and the knight. And now we get to move bishop g5. Okay, so now the funny thing about this opening is I actually think my opponent kind of has some idea of what they're doing. They're playing very quickly. Let's take the pawn on f3. Actually, that was a mistake by me. Let's go e6 here and guard the bishop. It's actually a very big mistake. I wasn't paying attention. Let's go knight d7. We guard the rook with the queen. Can move the rook to b8 here. Now the thing about this is when your opponent comes out guns blazing with some kind of heavy preparation, you do need to be very careful. I'm going to play rook to b8, just attacking the queen. If he takes, I can take with the king or the knight. Probably I just take with the knight if I had to guess. I can also play bishop b4. Okay, let's wait. So if I take with a bishop, take the bishop with a knight, bishop takes queen, rook takes queen, that's even trade. So he takes, I take, the queen goes away, I take the bishop, takes, I take with the queen. I actually am probably just winning the game here, oddly enough. If he takes my queen, I take his queen, the bishop moves, I take the pawn. This will be an interesting one to look at in the analysis because actually I haven't looked at this specific line in a long time. I do believe the bishop to f5 is correct. I think that after bishop g5 the best move might be knight bd7 if I'm not mistaken, but I'm curious to see exactly what the right approach is. I know this gambit is not supposed to be considered great for white, but it is something that if someone prepares it, they can get a very, very good position from if you don't know how to react. So this just hangs the bishop, the knight guards the rook, and oops. Okay, well, my opponent came out guns blazing with a great opening. As soon as he wasn't able to play off memorization, he immediately threw the game. Nonetheless, I am curious. So bishop f5 is okay. E takes f3 is fine too. But I played bishop f5. Yeah, so the correct move here is actually play the move knight bd7 because now the knight is guarded. So if white takes, you take, and then again you're still up a pawn. And if white takes on e4, you can just take, and this should be good for black as well. So the correct move would have been knight bd7, but I made the mistake of taking. I went here. It's actually not that bad. Computer still says it's equal, surprisingly enough. Material's even here. Both sides have 6 pawns on the board. Probably a little bit easier for black to play just because you have very quick development. You've got rook b8, you have bishop d6, b4, castles, whereas white has all these pieces on the original squares. Once again, like so many of our games thus far, the speed run. So we got bishop b5. Apparently queen takes a7 is the best move. How this occurred, my intention was to play bishop to e7 and then castling. Wants takes. It's kind of a very weird position. I don't know what's going on. But we got bishop takes knight, and then after takes, it's actually just -3 here. The bishop's under attack, so everything's hanging. So if white takes the rook, I take with the queen, not the knight, of course, because then white would take, and here white would have a rook for a bishop, so that would be bad. But if white were to take the rook, I can take back the queen. It's all Gucci. And if the queen goes away like we saw, I just take, and now the knight guards the rook, and I'm just winning the game. Had my opponent played bishop takes queen, after takes, bishop goes back, rook takes b2 with both bishop b4 and the c pawn hanging here, this is actually completely winning for black. So very, very quick first game. Let's keep going with our next one. Probably going to play a lot of games. Okay, we're playing Our next game, okay, let's play e4. I've been on a happy e4 run lately in these speedrun videos, so I'm gonna keep going with it. I've also faced this very recently, this Philidor defense. f6 is a terrible move. It's a move that pushes a pawn to guard, but black has 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 pieces on the original squares. So I'm gonna develop, try to castle. Okay, bishop g4. That's actually probably a good move. Now, the move that I'm going to play here might seem a little bit odd. I'm going to go c3, and maybe odd's the wrong word, but because I've mentioned putting the knights on f3 and c3 so often, you might wonder, why did I play c3? The reason I played c3 here is that I want to overprotect this white center. Additionally, because my opponent has played this f6 move, this diagonal could be a big issue. So I'm going to go queen b3, immediately looking to hit my opponent on either of these squares, either the pawn on b7 or the square on f7 immediately. And I think my opponent's in a lot of trouble here. Okay, I'm gonna go check. I'm gonna kick the king. This game also very likely going to be a quick game. Let's go h3, kick the bishop. My opponent will take. I think after it takes, I'm just gonna tickle the king, probably tickle the king, or maybe take. Okay, let's just take the bishop. My opponent has such bad development here. None of these pieces are developed. I've got a big white center. All the pawns are supportive. I can bring the bishop, the knight, castle, the king. The only issue is it's very hard to attack this king, because this king can slide over. c6 isn't the best move, and the reason this move isn't so great is, as we're going to see, it weakens this pawn on d6. So I'm going to go bishop to e3. I'm definitely going to castle queenside for two reasons. Number one, if I castle kingside, I have the compromised pawn structure, so I don't want to go this way. Secondarily, once I castle queenside, there's going to be a ton of pressure on this d file. There's going to be a ton of pressure with this rook hitting the pawn on d6. Let's just castle, immediately pressure building. Mainly that I'm looking here is to open files. My opponent has bad development, these pieces on the original squares. My opponent's moved the king a lot, so I'm gonna look to play on the only open file. Now, when you have rooks on files that can open up, if you can create a double or a triple stack, this can be very, very strong, and that's exactly what I'm aiming to do here. Knight h4, actually not a bad move. I kind of missed this. I don't even care though. I'm just gonna create the stack, and I'm going to look to really attack on the queen side here. I'm really looking to open up the center of the board as quickly as possible. After knight takes pawn, I'll slide the rook up, and I'm down a pawn. But again, with this weak king, all this pressure, all these jumps, we get g5. That's not the move I expected either. Okay, I'm going to go knight c4, again building up the pressure in the center of the board. As you can see, the rooks and the queen, they're just not active pieces for my opponent. So even though I'm giving up a pawn here, I'm going to open up this file for the double stack, and something really, really bad is about to happen here. I don't know if it's like losing, but something really, really bad is about to happen. I guess my opponent can take on d4 to keep the file closed, kind of. We get knight h4. Okay, now here, so if I take knight takes, actually I don't break through. I don't want to do this. It's not a bad move. I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go bishop e6. I'm going to really try to undermine this knight, these pawns. I'm going to take on e5 at some point. It's just a matter of when exactly I open up this file. Okay, knight g6. Opponent's fighting. Okay, let's go a4 instead. I'm going to play for a5, try to attack this way. Let's take. Now, here I think finally my opponent blundered. Now I can crash through. Now I can actually crash through. I take. He takes, I take on d6, not e5, although knight takes e5 is also good here. But after takes, I'm going to take the pawn on d6, and this file is going to open. Again, look at these rooks. They're simply not in the game at this point. So I will... It's actually not a bad move. I'll take the pawn on d6. My opponent's hanging on. Now, I'm going to win this game, but I'm actually kind of impressed by how well my opponent's defending this position. Because after king d7, it's very easy to... Okay, we get that, but that actually, as soon as I say that, my opponent just blunders with a double stack and pushing the p. Just completely crash through here. This is just game over. My queen, I take. It's just an extra rook. Nothing my opponent can do here. This is just game over. Yeah, it's simply game over with a double stack. Can I get flashy? I'm wondering if I can try to sack a queen. I think I'm going to try to get really flashy here. So I'm going to play knight to e5. So I'm basically going to attack the queen. My opponent takes, and this runs into d7 checkmate. This is a really, really flashy move, because basically, if black takes the queen, it's checkmate, like we saw. If black takes the knight, it's checkmate. If black takes the rook, I just take the queen. So black can try this, but it's going to be a similar problem. I check, take, and then there's probably some way to just create a checkmate very, very quickly. So back to the start of the game, we had a classic Philidor once again. I think in one of our previous videos we saw bishop g4, which is just a very, very bad move. Here, if you're going to play, especially from the black side, you pretty much have to take or play knight d7. Those are probably the two main lines. We get f6. Now immediately I play c3. The whole idea here was to both guard the pawn in the center, but also open up these threats on the diagonal via b3 to hit the pawn, and also the bishop, also the knight, and the check of the king here with the double A battery. Oh, I knight takes. Oh my gosh, I knight takes e5, which wins here. If black takes the queen, you have bishop f. I should have seen that actually. That's very poor. But I played queen b3. I saw a straightforward plan. I went check here. Takes. Now what my opponent probably should have tried is my opponent should have tried to run the king here, and the big difference between this position and the game is that the pawn structure is guarded. So even if I get like knight a3 and castles here, if I ever take, so let's just say black plays g5, if I ever take and black takes, the pawns are completely intact. This pawn really guards this pawn on d6, whereas when my opponent plays c6 here, now the pawn is very, very soft and a permanent target immediately. So c6 was actually a very bad move. After king c8, probably what would have occurred is I probably would have played like a4 to go a5. Let's just say black plays a5, and I would have gone knight a3 followed by knight c4, and it's kind of similar. Let's just say we get something like this. It's going to be kind of similar where I'm probably going to be sacking to break these chain of pawns. So let's just say black were to play rook f8, something like not d5, takes, and like I guess bishop takes b6 is probably winning with like knight d6. I think even rook takes d6, sacking the rook would also be winning here, as there's going to be some kind of fossil. So this is probably what would occur, but it would not have been winning immediately on the spot. Whereas after c6, I develop. Knight h4 is actually a very creative move. Goes g5. Get this. I go here. If I had taken, this is probably, oh, this is probably still winning. So after takes, I think there's a sack. There's this sack, which I didn't see, with rook d6, and I mean everything completely collapses here. So this would have been winning. And if black takes the pawn, then I crash through with a double stack, and it's just GG immediately. So this would have been better. I went here. We got this. I played a4 idea, just create these massive weaknesses in the center, and attack the king. Knight f4, I take. Should have taken with the e pawn. This way I can't force open the d file. But even after a5, b5, something like knight a3, I can go c4 and look to open up the c file. And black should be losing. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces on the back rank. This knight can't jump at all because the pawn dominates both the squares, and eventually something terrible will happen. So I should win this game pretty much no matter what. All right, so let's keep going. These first two games haven't been super inspiring. Let's go with the next game. As for anybody who's wondering about the rating, we are now nearing the 1600 level rating, so I'm expecting to have more games that go into the middle game, probably around 1600, maybe 1700 at the most. Let's go d5. Standard setup, develop the bishop, castles the king. So now we got the move pawn takes pawn. Now here I would say below probably 2400 online, if your opponent ever takes, even if you have pawn, actually I guess if you ever have this structure your opponent takes, always take with the pawn. Do not take with the knight. Always take with the pawn in the center and push this pawn to c6 and create the chain of 3. This is what I would say. Do this 100% of the time. There are obviously going to be some exceptions. Someone will probably write in the comment, well, I have this position and this position, computer said take with the knight. There are going to be exceptions, but below probably 2400 online blitz, or rapid I should say even. Let's just use blitz ratings, so that's more what I'm used to. If your opponent ever takes with a pawn, always take back with the pawn on d5. Always take back. There's never going to be a situation where you want to take with a knight. We got d4. Okay, so I'm going to put my bishop on d6 with a chain of 3. I'm going to castle my king and go rook e8. Finish the development. Okay, this is a slightly weird move. And the reason this move is actually a little bit weird is because with white having fianchettoed the bishop, whenever I play h6, white cannot keep the pin alive by going back, because whenever you go back, I have g5 to trap the bishop. So I'm actually just going to castle first, because I always can play h6. So we get knight f3. So now I'm going to play h6. If my opponent goes back, there's always g5. So remember, if your opponent fianchettos the bishop and they try to create a pin with bishop g5, usually it's not going to be effective, because when the bishop goes back to the edge, you'll be able to trap the bishop. So generally, if you fianchetto, you're not looking to bring a piece out to pin a knight unless you're intending to trade the bishop for the knight specifically. Okay, so let's go rook e8, play on this half open e file with the tower. Develop the bishop, develop the knight, develop the rook. We're going to reach a middle game, which is going to be nice, I think, for the first time in the speed run. Maybe not first time, but one of the first times, where we finish the development. So both sides have developed. White's fianchettoed the bishop. We've both brought out our pieces, but there is one advantage that black has here. And the one advantage that black has is this half open e file. So you'll notice my rook on this e file has all these squares. Doesn't mean I can do anything, but the rook is spying on the file, whereas the white rook is very passive. So we get queen b3 hitting the pawn. Now, because of the structure, I never have any of those knight c6, knight a5 ideas. I can't trap the queen, so I definitely am looking to guard this pawn somehow. Now, there are a couple of options here. I can move my knight to stop the capture. I can move my rook, or I can move my queen. Now, initially, I would think queen c7 looks right, but this setup with these bishops on queen c7 actually isn't great here. I'm going to explain something about the exchange Caro-Kann and the London in the analysis, but if I move my queen here, it's not super great because I'm staring at a diagonal. So AA battery has no scope as there's just a bunch of pawns in the way of anything if I go here. Additionally, if I move the queen after rook c1, there are some threats with the knight moving and some pressure on the c file. So I don't really want to play queen c7. So it's really rook b8, move the knight. If I push the pawn, I don't really want to do that because right now the chain is very solid. If I push this one, then this one's going to become very weak. This pawn's going to become very weak. So I don't want to do that. So I think the move I'm going to play here is just rook b8 to guard the pawn. Queen to b8 also a move as well. But as I mentioned earlier, the AA battery isn't really doing anything on this diagonal. Knight h4, of course we drop the bishop back. Whole point of playing h6 is so that whenever the knight tries to harass the bishop, we slide it backwards. So we get the move a4. Now, initially I didn't bring my knight out to b6, but with my opponent's trying to push these pawns forward, I think I'm going to move my knight here. And the reason I'm going to put the knight here is now I have this very juicy square to hit the bishop. Now, I could have done this all the way back here. It's a very valid question why I didn't. But the pawn on a2, I was always worried that white could move the queen and play b3 somewhere. Whereas now I feel like with the pawn on a4 here, this pawn is too advanced. Knight c4 is incoming. Also with the rook on b8, maybe I can look to push this pawn and open the file as well. That's why I didn't do it right away, even though I suspect that in this position the top computer move probably was knight b6. Nonetheless, we'll play knight b6 now. Now what I'm looking for here is squares. So I've got this open file with the rook potentially hitting a pawn down the road. It's sort of just spying the pawn. I'm never capturing it because it's guarded very well. But I'm looking to try and put pressure here in the center of the board. Specifically, I want to maybe activate stuff, maybe get a double stack on the e file. Maybe I want to go c5 and try to open up a diagonal. But the main point here is that my opponent doesn't actually have any great plans. Like white can't play e4 because I'm overprotecting with the knight, the bishop, the pawn, and the rook. So white doesn't have any plans, so it's more for me what I'm going to try to do in this position. Now, what I'm talking about is pretty advanced. I don't think most players can do this even at a master level generally, which is trying to understand both your plans and what your opponent has in a position. It's one of the most important skills I would say that top grandmasters have specifically, because like I'm thinking about both my plans but also what my opponent's trying to do. So if you're 1500 watching this video, don't worry about trying to understand your opponent's plan. Just try to focus on your plan, try to avoid hanging pieces, and work off of that foundation. Now my knight here is guarded by the pawn. I'm forking the bishop from the pawn. I think I can just take the pawn, but you know what's funny, if I take the pawn and white moves the queen, suddenly the a file kind of opens up. It does kind of open up. So let's see if I can come with a more concrete plan that the viewers will like. So the concrete plan I'm going to play is knight e4. And I'm going to play this move because now I've got these great knights in the center of the board, but I'm trying to create some kind of double stack here in the middle, maybe even a triple stack to hit the rook and the pawn. White's piece is very passive. Rook is on a closed file. Rook is stuck guarding the pawn. The bishop has nothing. I mean, there are a ton of pieces on this diagonal. We'll take. I mean, I've got tons of stuff. So passive bishop staring pretty much at nothing. Passive rook guarding a pawn. Passive rook behind a pawn. So white has a lot of passive pieces here. Now, if my opponent doesn't take the bishop, that would be insane, because after giving up the fianchettoed bishop, if white doesn't take this bishop, there are going to be serious light square weaknesses in the camp. So I expect white to take. I'll take with the rook. Okay, we get f3. So I'll just drop the juicer back. Now I think there are going to be some serious problems. The pawn is still hanging on a5 as well. But with my opponent missing a light square b, now I definitely, like, I'd love to open up a diagonal. Like c5, I'd love to play here. Unfortunately, if I play c5, this hangs a pawn. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go here. I'm going to hit this pawn. Maybe now there's some more pressure towards these two pawns as well. At some point, I'm desperately going to try to open up the center of the board, though, because my opponent's pieces are also pushed back. I could try to go h5, h4, but the knight stops, and so I don't really love attacking on the edge. So it's really going to hinge upon these two files. It's just a D and E file. This is a mistake, so I can just trade the bishops and take the pawn. Actually, it's a very, very serious error, because once I take, now this pawn is going to become what we call a backwards pawn. I'm going to blockade it with a rook or a knight on this e3 square. I think I'm just gonna go rook to e3. Now this pawn I can really stack up and really try to put massive pressure on it. It can never move. The rook is in the way. It can't go forward. The rook just stuffs it. Also, if you ever end up in a situation where there is a pawn blockaded, you definitely can always try to just keep mounting the pressure, because this pawn can never get out of the way. It's just stuck. So what I'm going to actually do here is I'm going to try to load up a triple stack, push the peak, kick these knights, and then just win this pawn. This pawn is my goal. This is my goal. This pawn, I want to win it. So I probably want to go g5 and d4, kick both of these knights that are guarding the pawn, with both of these squares. That's probably what I'm gonna do. I probably will try to hit both of these knights. Like these knights are in serious trouble once I start to push them, because they're the only things that are guarding this pawn. So we get queen b4. Okay, logical move. Now I am gonna play g5 here, so I'm immediately gonna try to kick these knights out of town. Just kick the knight. Probably gonna go rook to e8. Okay, my opponent sacks. I actually like this concept. It's actually a great concept, because this knight on c4 is a little bit weak. Unfortunately for my opponent, I can drop the queen to guard this knight here, so I'm still up a piece, but I probably should not have allowed this. There probably was a cleaner way to play this. Actually, there's rook c5. Wait, I blundered. My opponent has rook c5. I didn't see that. Okay, that's great. It's game on. Now I still probably will find a way to win, but that was actually very disappointing. Although, can I get creative? I'm trying to see. I don't see a good way to be creative. So I'm going to basically have to try and create counterplay. I blundered this rook c5 move. I'm trying to figure out how creative I want to be here. I think I'll be. I can be very creative or not creative. I think I'm going to be not creative. So I'm going to go queen d7 here. I'm going to try to put my other rook on e8 to stack. Maybe bishop f5. I am completely lost here. I did actually miss this rook c5 idea altogether. Let's go here. Try to stack against the pawn. My opponent does have rook c7. Let's go here. I have to stop the mate. I am losing this position. My opponent found a very, very nice tactic, which I actually overlooked. I completely overlooked. I'm still going to win the game because of the time situation, but I did overlook this. So I need to guard the pawn from being captured. g5 was actually bad. I was trying to play too much on the concepts. I should have probably just done something else, but nonetheless, I tipped my cap to my opponent because I did miss this rook c5 move. And this also shows the power of tactics. Like this, obviously my opponent's very low rated, but this shows the power of tactics because I missed this tactic. And if I were playing someone who were like 23 or 2400 in online blitz, I would lose this game. So I'm gonna play g4. I'm gonna sack a pawn, and the reason I'm gonna sack the pawn is I want to try to attack on the e and the f files here. So let's see. My opponent plays f4. Let's go h5, h4. I'm probably gonna have to flag my opponent here. I don't really like having to do this, but I think I'm gonna have to do this. Let's go here. Let's go here. There's f5 maybe. Now it's a very unfortunate blunder by me to allow this, but credit to my opponent. 1591. This is very, very impressive. But it also speaks to how, if actually this guy, if you don't make blunders at all in the course of a game, you are going to win a lot of games. Like my opponent, he did blunder a pawn, but it's a very minimal blunder. If you blunder a pawn up to probably like 1800, like you're gonna get, or if you can blunder a pawn, you're going to get up to that level if that's all that you blunder in a game. Okay, this guy's very slow now, kind of running out of time. Really running out of time. 1 minute and ticking. So we get f5, which is a great move as well. I'm going to take. Problem for my opponent though is that he's kind of running out of time here. I think I'm gonna go here, try to hit the pawn maybe. Gonna have to flag him. Not thrilled, but it is what it is. Let's go here. And voila, we win the game. Now, this game, of course, I was losing, but let's go back to the start. Now, there are a couple important things. The first important point here is that when you play this Queen's Gambit decline, let's say you get some position like this, there are almost no situations where you're going to want to take with the knight, and that's primarily because white can build this big white center by pushing the knight backwards if you ever take with the knight. So it doesn't matter whether it's a third move. It could be like even much later in the game, like you could put knight f3, bishop e7, something like even something like here, for example. You always are going to take with the pawn, always. Now, whether you put the pawn on c6 or c5 is another question for how you approach it. When the early capture occurs, I really like c6 because you overprotect the pawn against the threats on the diagonal. And now I castled, I played h6, rook e8. This is all very good. Now, I was making a point about queen c7. The point that I made is that you're staring at a closed diagonal. So when you reach a position like this, you can never do anything on this diagonal because of the pawn formation. So you don't really have any effective threats with this double A battery. Also, say you get a position like this, there's knight b5 here, forking the queen and the bishop with the rook on the open file. So that's why I didn't really like queen c7. But speaking of pawn structures and positions, if we go back to the start of the game, I'm going to flip the board for 1 second. There is this variation, the exchange Caro-Kann, where you get a position like this, for example. And if black plays g6, just to illustrate the point, generally you're not going to go queen c2 because, again, you get this double A battery, but you're staring at this pawn formation and there's really no way to attack it. However, if your opponent doesn't play g6, say you get something like a position like this, for example, playing bishop c2 and queen d3 is a possibility. Playing queen c2 is a possibility because there are threats on the diagonal. So it just depends on the setup. But normally if your opponent has this setup with the pawns, creating a double A battery doesn't make a lot of sense. Let's flip the board. Let's go back to the game. When we look at this position right here, you'll notice it's very similar with the two bishops, this chain of 3 pawns. But after queen b3, I played the move rook to b8. Apparently computer likes b5, but that's just advanced, not for this video. I go rook b8, I play knight b6, I play knight c4. Here I probably should have taken the pawn, but I thought that after queen to a2, if I play b6, oh, there's no b4, I'm blind. I can just take the pawn. What am I smoking? So actually this would have been just very good. And if white goes knight f3, even rook b7, rook e7, guard the pawn on a7, double stack, this should be really good for black, and black should just be close to winning. So not ideal. We go forward right here. You guys are going to ask me what I did wrong. Probably here I should have just played knight to e3 check, and when the king goes I can just like move the queen. Even knight c2 is a possible move as well, so this would have been a lot better, but I went here. Yeah, and then I blundered g5, and after knight takes, apparently the best move here is to play bishop to d3, the very obvious move, guarding the knight. Just very weird. But I took, and now I'm actually in trouble. Apparently there's still rook to e4, and if white takes, I guess there's knight e3, winning the queen. And I mean, I guess this is still a game. Very advanced, but I completely missed rook c5, which is a great move. Queen guards the rook. Now both pieces under attack, and now white is simply winning. The rest of the game, I mean, I was just worse, but I flagged my opponent, so that's kind of how it goes. All right, so we have time. Let's do one more game. This time we got white. I'm going to play e4 again, like I always do. Let's play knight to f3, hitting the pawn on e5, and now we get to move d6. So after we get this move d6, I'm going to play d4 once again, trying to play against this Philidor. I feel like I've seen the Philidor a lot in the last, like, we get takes in the last probably 10 games. I feel like I've seen this Philidor at least like 4 or 5 times. I'm going to go knight c3, knight c6, and now I'm going to play the move bishop e3. Now I haven't committed to castling queenside, but when my opponent trades, if I get this queen in the center, generally I'm looking to go to the queen side. So we get queen f6, logical move. I'm going to play queen b4 here, hitting this pawn on b7. And I also have knight d5. I'm also spying this pawn. So I think if this king starts trying to go this way, I think there are all kinds of problems. Okay, bishop c6, very reasonable. Let's just castle. Why not? Bishop b5 is the top move, I'm sure, but I want to follow the simple theme, so let's just castle here. Now the problem for my opponent is I have this bishop spying the pawn. The queen is over on this side of the board too. Like, all these pawns are really weak, so you don't necessarily want to castle this king out of the center of the board. But if you don't go this way, you have 1 2 3 pieces that are in the way. You've got 1 2 3, you need to go one or two, I should say 1 2 to castle this way. So it's hard to get the king out. After d5, I'm just going to go queen b3. I don't want to hang my queen. But now this king, like with this lack of development on the king's side, I think something really bad is about to happen. So let's go knight d5, attack the pawn, attack the queen. I think this game is going to end very, very suddenly because I have a feeling this monarch is never going to leave the center of the board. Just my view. Get takes. I think I'll take with the queen. I'm threatening checkmate in 1. I also have bishop b5. I also have the pawn on b7. Rook takes was also probably good as well. We get bishop d6. So now what I'm going to do here is I think I'm going to throw in a check because I don't want this king being able to castle. If my opponent plays c6, I can take, hit the king and the rook. Whoops. Okay, I take, and then when I take, I hit the king with the check, but then I also win the rook in the corner pocket. We take, king's got to go, rook hangs. We take the rook. Now, of course, my opponent also can't develop these pieces. So this is going to be a clean wipeout. King in the center of the board. No way to activate the pieces on the edge. Just a very, very smooth victory. So we get g6. Now, the thing is with this position, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to sack the rook. And the reason I'm going to sack the rook here is the bishop was the one active piece. So when I go rook to d1 here, black now has these pieces that just cannot get into the action. There are all kinds of threats on the d file. The e4 pawn is hanging. This king almost certain, if this king can get to this g7 square and you can bring the knight, black would be fine. But black is never going to get these pieces in the game. So this is pretty much GG. So let's just take the pawn, hit the king. It's not the only move to win, but it's one of the better ones. Okay, so let's go. Okay, how do I play this? I think I'm going to play a weird move. I'm going to go queen h4. This might look a little bit weird. The reason I'm going to go here is because I want to have bishop to h6. I want to have rook to d8 very importantly. So this queen covers these two squares specifically for both rook d8 and bishop h6. And I still have this d4 square to hit this rook on the diagonal as well. So we got the move f6. This is actually a good move. I think it's an excellent move for my opponent. The position's lost, but it's a good move to try and keep the game going. Because if black can get king f7 and knight e7, then you can try to bring the rook into the game. I am up a couple of pawns on the queen side, but I really don't want this to reach that stage. So how do I play this? How do I play this, try and win immediately? I think the move I'm going to play now is queen to h3. And now with f6 cutting off my rook d8, I'm going to aim to play rook d7 while keeping this h6 square still available for both pieces. So we get knight to e7. I see queen e6. Queen e6 is a move. Rook d7 is a move. All roads lead to Rome. So I'm just going to play rook to d7 here. The queen guards the rook. I hit both pieces. Get queen c4. Okay, this is a blunder because now I think I can check. And actually, the queen is perfectly placed because when the king goes forward to guard this rook in the corner, I have bishop to h6 check, and then I can just take the rook, go check. Queen guards the bishop. King has to go. So we can take the rook. Actually, wait. King f7 takes. There is queen f1. I just noticed. But this is winning, but this actually is a little bit tricky here, ironically enough, because there are a couple of checks as we're about to see. This is winning, but I probably should not have allowed this. So I feel like at 1500 might actually lose this game. My opponent's going to take. And I'm not really going to talk about this. I'll talk about this in the analysis because these lines are going to be pretty random. I'm going to go here. There's no check on d4. There's no check on f5. I have an extra rook here. So as long as this rook gets into the game, I play. We get queen f1. Okay. It's actually very tricky. So I go here. If he checks, I slide over and there's no check. Again, if it's white's turn, I have checkmate in 1 with rook f8. So when my opponent checks on d5, I go king d4 here. And there's not a good check, but I should definitely not have allowed this. I should never have allowed this. Queen e1, king b3. There's no check because the queen covers a square. So I go here. There's no check. There's no check. Now the extra rook plays and I win the game. Knight d5 was the only attempt, but after knight d5, king d4, I'm pretty sure it was winning, but I'll take a look at it once we analyze after the game. Okay, so now I'm going to take the pawn. Now I'm just going to play check, get rid of the queens. Very, very happy to reach this end game. Now I breathe a sigh of relief. It's all good. We just take a pawn, just push the pawn up the board. My opponent only has a knight, so as long as I don't allow one of these pawns to get down the board, I simply am going to win the game. Can't really happen easily. I mean, maybe if he can just push, but I have this pawn that goes up the board very quickly as well, so just no hope. Okay, I'm just going to sack the rook. Now I'm more than happy because it's literally 2 pawns. As long as I don't let one of these pawns get through, like if the pawn ever goes here, I take. Pawn ever gets here, I take. So now I can just push the pawn all the way up the board. And my opponent resigns the game. So as we take a look at the analysis, we've seen this opening many times. I played knight c3, bishop to e3, takes the queen. Again, here I feel like black probably needs to kick this queen, get this position. This is actually already close to winning. Bishop to b5 would have been a winning move here for white, but I castled. I went here. Still is probably close to winning. Get takes. Yeah, now I checked. Many ways to win. Probably here king to f8 is the best try, followed by rook d8, and black's not actually down any material really other than pawns. But the problem still is how to get these pieces in. If you ever go g6, there's always going to be some bishop d4 idea. If you go knight e7, for example, white can just play rook to e1. And again, there's just so much pressure on these files that it's all but hopeless. So we got this. I take. Now I sack the rook. I played here, takes, played here, knight e7. Yeah, now actually it's a winning position, but probably actually queen to h6 would have been the better try, because after takes and queen to f1, king d2, I have a bishop that just cards the pawn, and none of these check ideas exist. But I was so tunneled on just winning this rook that I played the wrong check. I checked here, and it's actually kind of tricky because, for example, if I go king c3 here and black checks, if I go this way, black can just check forever, and so we get back to the same position, and eventually if I go back, it's the same problem. So I have to go to d3, and now queen to f1 is the only check. And here we got queen e1, and now there's no check. If check, I take, and I'm safe, so I win the game. If black goes knight d5, though, it's still a little bit tricky here, because if I go king b3, there's actually check and checkmate. It's a very funny checkmate, king on the edge. So I have to be careful. King d2 probably is winning as well. I would have gone king d4, attacking the knight. And now after queen d1, I can simply block with the queen and take the knight on the next turn. Say check, I just take. If you don't check, the extra rook will have all kinds of time to attack the king. So there's nothing black can really do in this situation. Nonetheless, I made this a little bit trickier than usual, but after king b3, now I just trade the queens, and the rest, of course, is very elementary. So we get more wins on the speed run. The main thing that I'm noticing, especially as we approach the 1600 level, is that I'm seeing a lot of similarity in the openings. Like, I'm seeing a lot of people playing the Philidors. I'm seeing a lot of people playing these d4 c4s as well, but it feels like there's a lot of similarity, which kind of surprises me. I don't really know the reason for that, especially with the Philidor, because I don't feel like anybody really recommends that opening, so I find it a touch peculiar. But at any rate, I think you guys have seen so many Philidor openings that you have a pretty good grip on how to handle it and crush this opening if they play this e5 d6 setup specifically. So hope you guys learned about the Philidor. Obviously the Blackmar-Diemer Gambith was also an interesting first game in this video, but at any rate, that's going to do it for our latest edition of the educational speedrun series. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, make sure that you smash that subscribe button below, and we'll be back with more great content very soon. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys. Bye.